Hey guys, Zomfox here, and it is time for my Week 5 game picks for the 2025 UFL season. That's right, the NFL Draft's first round just happened yesterday, and tonight we have a Friday Night Football game between the Showboats and the Stallions. So it is time for me to give my game picks on this week, as last week was one of the better weeks of the season for me. So without further ado, let's get started with the first two games, that being the Friday night game between the Showboats and Stallions, and the Panthers Battlehawks on Saturday. Now, one of the two games I will be doing a live play-by-play for is, of course, the Friday Night Football game starting at 7:45 EST between the Showboats and the Stallions. Now, the Showboats are... Man, this is bad. I mean, they are the clear underdogs. This is, I think, the worst spread we've seen, 11.5-point favorites for Birmingham. The over and under being 37.5 really is telling. When you see a spread that big and an over-under that low, well, not low, but, the league hasn't really had a 40-point in a while. That says something. Now, it's important to note this is a different QB matchup than we've seen pretty much from either team. The starting quarterbacks are going to be Case Cookis for the Stallions versus Dresser Wynn for the Showboats. That's right, the QB3 the Showboats signed a few weeks ago to replace Quentin Normandie is getting his shot. I'm actually all for this move. The fact is that the two quarterbacks have proven to be exactly what I feared they would be, which is guys who clearly aren't good enough to actually get you any sort of win or basically beat anyone that matters. And they couldn't even beat the Roughnecks and they played them, so that's really bad. As for the Stallions, Matt Corral looks like he's going to be out for a couple of weeks at least. They ended up bringing back Jamar Smith at QB3, and Cookis is now starting. Again, the fact that he was their QB3 and now their starter is insane, but he's starting. How do I think this game goes? I think Birmingham wins it 20-12. Originally, I was going to pick this to be a higher scoring game, and then I realized that I really don't see Birmingham putting up more than like 20 points, and I was like, yeah, you know what, no. Look, the Showboats defense has not gotten turnovers. Surely they're going to get at least something here. The Stallions offense just has not been good pretty much any time this season. Even last week was one of their better performances, and it's not like they lit the world on fire. As for Memphis, it's just, until they win, you have to pick them to lose every game. They're at that kind of point right now, where even if you really think they're going to, get an upset, it's hard to actually believe that. But, man, 11.5 points is insane, especially with how these games usually are low scoring. I know the Showboats did pretty poor against the Panthers last week, but the Panthers offense is a much more dynamic group than the Stallions, mainly because of their quarterback. Yes, the Stallions have a couple of incredible receivers, but when you don't have a guy like Bryce Perkins at quarterback, it hurts, right? The reason the Panthers are so much more threatening is because you have a quarterback that can run and is finally doing it, which opens the door for the running backs to play well. The Stallions' ground game has not been great this season. Again, pretty much no ground game has, but theirs hasn't. And now you're continuing this trend of getting slightly less mobile at quarterback. Of course, Cookis, right, had that incredible season his first year with Philadelphia. Then he broke his leg, came back, wasn't as good. I just don't see this being a game the Showboats win, but I do think it's closer than people would expect. Friday Night Football games haven't been great this season, and we usually see some of the more ugly play during it because teams are not fully used to doing this after last season. I just don't see Memphis pulling this off, but I don't see Birmingham dominating this one. Again, Cookis had that great throw last week, but this is his first game as a starter. It would be cool to see him get his revenge on the Showboats. The Showboats starting a new quarterback. It would be a great story if Memphis pulls it off, but I think Birmingham gets this W 20-12. Panthers Battlehawks. I said it last week, and I'll say it again. This was probably the worst game for the Panthers, because this is one of those games where no matter what happens, their narrative is not going to change about them. If they win this game, it's St. Louis were frauds, they're injured, not a real win. If the Battlehawks win, however, it's, man, the Panthers were favored in St. Louis and lost. They're only, they're just bad team merchants kind of thing. It's a bad game for the Panthers. As for the Battlehawks, there's a reason they're not favored at home. There's a reason why they're 2.5-point underdogs with an over under 37.5. The injuries, and man, Duggan looked awful last week. Duggan played really poorly. Yes, they still ended up having a shot to win the game against the Renegades, which I've said before is more a testament to the Renegades not being as good as a lot of people are trying to make them out to be. Like, people are acting like their defense is the best in the league after they had that one incredible week in terms of, like, pass rush. Like, I'm not saying it's overall mainly pass rush. People are acting like they're the best in the league. They had one incredible week, but you have to see more than that because, of course, DC had one incredible week in week one. The point is, The Arlington Battlehawks game, I think a lot of people are kind of taking the wrong things away from that game. They're kind of just box score watching, seeing a 15-point difference, being like, oh, St. Louis is so much worse than Arlington. When it's like, St. Louis should have won that game. Arlington got an 8-point handicap, then won off a pick six. Like, that's not an impressive win. I mean, I live streamed that game. Everybody who was hearing that stream knows what I'm talking about. As for the Panthers, their offense has continued to get better and better ever since they started running with Perkins. Big issue, however, Danny Etling is back healthy. That shouldn't be an issue, but Nolan still wants to actually play him. If the Panthers lose this game, it's most likely it's because of Etling and Nolan. But overall, the Panthers should win this game 24-18. A higher scoring game that's close, but the Panthers win. And it's going to be close because of Danny Etling. That's kind of what I think. In theory, the Panthers should somewhat easily win this game. Both these teams are injured, but the Panthers, they just have an offense that's much more threatening. Now, yes, the Battlehawks are expected to get Hakeem Butler back this week, as well as one of their O-linemen, whereas the Panthers just lost Javin White, so they lost another defender, which is why I think St. Louis does put up more points. But as we've seen this season, Hakeem Butler, it's not like it's the end-all, be-all. This receiving core is just so damn good that even getting him back is not like a massive upgrade. It's an upgrade, but it's not like, going from no receivers to an elite one. You have great receivers. The issue is your quarterback. And Sailors, he's been the best RB in the league so far, but the last couple of weeks he hasn't been dominating. Even though I said he looked better than his stats showed, which I still believe last week, still hasn't been incredible. We'll see how this game goes, but I'm picking the Panthers to pull this one off. Now, as for the Sunday games, we have the Defenders versus the Renegades and the first Tank Bowl of the season between the Roughnecks and the Brahmas. Now, the Defenders, Arlington, they are 3.5-point favorites, Arlington at home. Over under 39.5. As for this one, this is a big deal. A lot of people still believe that these two teams are the two best in the league, along with Birmingham. Most people seem to say it's one of those three teams. Again, Arlington being number one is very weird considering they didn't have an impressive win, yet DC just lost their first game. And now people think that San Antonio might be better than St. Louis. I don't know, it's just weird. The point is, though, this is a big deal for both teams. This is one of those matchups where it is one of those where it's going to be very telling again. Whoever wins this game is not a guarantee, but damn near guarantee to make the playoffs. Because now you're automatically getting a game over your opponent, who is your top rival right now in the conference, and that puts you at a 4-1 record halfway through the season. It's pretty hard to choke that. So that's a big deal. Now, other thing, I believe I heard somewhere that because of scheduling conflicts, DC might not get a home game this year in the playoffs. I believe I heard that, but even with that, I think DC pulls this one off. I think DC wins 23-17. Again, another good game. It ends up hitting just barely the over. I think this is what happens. It's hard for me to look at this game and think that Arlington's going to pull it off. Arlington has just not been impressive. They very much feel like an overrated team. Not a team like DC where we had to see if it was real for a couple weeks and we were like, okay, this defense is really good, their offense not as much. Arlington, it just feels like they've gotten a couple games where it's like, not good. The Houston game, not a good game played by them. They didn't play well, escaped with a win. Birmingham, people complain about the officiating and the fumble. I stand by the fumble should have stayed Arlington, but as I said in the stream, even with that officiating, Arlington should have still won that game by double digits. They did not outplay Birmingham. They thoroughly annihilated Birmingham, yet still lost. That says more about how bad Arlington is in that kind of game than it does how good Birmingham is. And then the St. Louis game. If you eliminate the literal handicap they got off Manny's Achilles injury, they probably do lose that game. So it's hard to justify calling Arlington this incredible team. So, picking DC to win it. I just think they pull it off. I think that even though the offense still doesn't look great, this is still a great defense, and they were able to get a lot of yards last week. If Teamu can just get slightly more accurate with his passes, they should win this game pretty easily. This is a good O-line versus D-line matchup as well. Abram Smith probably still won't do much on the ground, but I think that this is going to be a low-scoring game, and these lower-scoring games very much favor DC over Arlington, picking them to get the W. Now, as for the final game, the Tank Bowl, which is the other game I'm streaming this weekend, Roughnecks versus Brahmas. The Brahmas are still in the playoff race. I know it's shocking to think about, but they really are. Because they got the win over DC, they are still kind of in it. Now, they need this win, obviously. As for Houston, they're still kind of in it, but not as much because their win is not like, the Brahmas getting a win over DC is a big deal. Houston's win over Memphis basically means nothing. It's a tough one. Now, this is going to be Jalen McClendon versus Kellen Mond. McClendon is starting. So, for me as a fan of players, I hope the Roughnecks win. What do I think happens? I think the 3.5-point favorites win and cover. I think San Antonio wins 27-20. I think we get a higher scoring game. I think that the Brahmas offense has continued to improve under Pardee, and it's going to continue this week. At least as of now, it looks like there's no sign of Wade Phillips coming back this week, so it's going to be Pardee's time again this week. I think the offense continues to get better. Last week they did hit over 20, but that was because of the punt return touchdown. This time I think they hit 20 legitimately, and they win. As for the Roughnecks, McClendon continues to play well. Again, this is against a pretty poor San Antonio defense, but they just don't do enough to win. I know they're getting some reinforcements back, but so far this season, the Roughnecks ground game has been atrocious, and it's just been the quarterbacks pretty much. I think San Antonio gets it done. Kellen Mond has been very efficient. He hasn't been an incredible passer in a sense of, oh man, look at his stats. But he's been efficient. He's not turning the ball over. He's not making mistakes. That's been the benefit for having Kellen Mond on your team this year, is he's not turning the ball over. I think that continues this week. They get this win because they win the turnover differential by 1. San Antonio wins 27-20. Now, as for the overall record this past week, I went positive again. It was just barely positive, but I did. And I got another perfect game betting prediction. I believe it was the Stallions Roughnecks game. I called all 3 correct and the over, under, and all that. And I was like 5 points away from getting that game perfect score. I was like a couple points away from 2 different teams. Overall, though, we're still 1 game back on the over-under from being even. 2 on the spread, but we got pretty positive on the money line. We're now 10-6 on it. So, seeing some decent improvement on all those areas. Again, so far haven't been incredible this season. There's always been like 1 game I get completely wrong, which also happened this past week. Yes, if St. Louis gets that final touchdown, I end up getting that one like 2 out of 3 correct. Instead, they throw a pick 6, and I get it completely wrong. Usually when you have a game that the spread is like less than 2, it's very hard to get that one perfect if, the team that you pick loses, obviously. But overall, we're now at 9 overall perfect game betting predictions across the 2 seasons. Haven't had another perfect score yet, but maybe we'll get one this week. Overall records, though, pretty solid. We should be able to jump over the 40 total money line correct predictions. Maybe 30 on the spread, but we'll see. Overall, though, this has been Zom Fox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as I upload any videos. Again, I'm streaming the game tonight, and I'm streaming a game on Sunday. Didn't have a week video like a Wednesday, Thursday video just because I did a ton of work the last 2 weeks. But obviously next week I'll have a Tank Bowl video during the week, maybe something else. So be on the lookout for all that. And as always, guys, have a great night.